Welcome. One of the co-authors, really fascinating book. I think we've all wanted to know more about the behind the scenes of magic, and that's what it's called, The Secret History of Magic, the true story of the deceptive art. We're joined today by Jim Steinmeyer, and he's a magic designer in his own right, author, and he's created a lot of the great effects that you've seen on stage and television and Broadway around the world, and he joined us by telephone. Jim Steinmeyer is with us, and Jim, good to talk with you. How are you?
Thanks. Great to be here, Doug.
Yeah, good to have a chance to chat with you. I had an opportunity to read through the book. I was one of those kids that I guess a lot of kids did this back when they were a certain age, get the magic kit. There was a little shop in our town that gave magic lessons at one time, so I took those. So I guess everybody, particularly I guess guys, got gravitated to magic that way. Is that how you started?
I would say that's right. I have a similar story. I grew up in Chicago, and Chicago had a great magic shop. And what that means is you have really great magicians around, and it's all one of those things that feeds on itself. So I had great mentors, and I became interested in magic.
Yeah, this was actually one of those little 5 and 10 shops, but he was an amateur magician, the man who owned it, and he would always do tricks for the kids, and of course he sold them too. So that was a lot of fun. But I guess that's how most people get started. But you kind of took it to a career level.
I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed that you didn't become a professional magician, Doug.
What's that?
I'm disappointed that you didn't become a
I wasn't quite good enough. So I went into broadcasting, where everybody else goes.
Okay.
But, I guess that you kind of took it into a career level. I always wondered, and we'll get into the book in a minute, but how do you, if you want to become a professional, how do you learn really how to do these tricks? Because nobody's going to tell you unless they're pretty sure that you're going to do it as a profession, not give it away. So how do you do that?
Well, it's really interesting. One of the great myths, and we write about this in the book, is that magicians guard their secrets and will never let anybody in on their secrets. Of course, if you think about that, there would be exactly one generation of magicians, and then it would stop.
Right.
If they never shared their secrets. So magicians do share their secrets. There's a tremendous literature about magic. I'm sure that listeners could go on YouTube and find little videos that explain how tricks are done. Professional magicians know that there's an unbelievable literature, and magicians give lectures for each other and demonstrate their tricks and sell their tricks. And they're very anxious. There's a big community of magicians. They're very anxious to share their tricks. But the tricks are concealed. The tricks are secretive, mostly because you don't want people to know how simple they are, how kind of basic those secrets are that are fooling an audience. And it's not really the secret itself that magicians are guarding. What they're guarding are the techniques that make those secrets wonderful, that make those secrets intriguing and entertaining, when they're actually quite simple and quite dull.
Yeah, just kind of the history of the book, like you said, the history of magic, I should say, it goes back thousands of years, because I guess the old cups and balls trick was really one of the first ones, I guess, that was documented, right, in China?
Absolutely, and the ancient Greeks write about seeing that, yes.
Which every kid learns that one. That was sold in all magic shops. But kind of interesting to go back into the history of magic, and I guess you being a lifelong magician and in it yourself. What was your process of doing the research on that?
It's very interesting because Peter Lamont, who's my co-author, has always been interested in the creation myths, as he calls them, of magic. The stories we tell ourselves about the significant magicians and why magic took shape at various times. And, of course, those creation myths, by calling them myths, you understand that we often exaggerate those. We often tell those for specific reasons to make a point. So we decided to go back and really look at the history of magic and kind of set the story straight, look behind the scenes, and explain why magicians were doing certain things at certain times and how they kept that art popular, even at a time when it shouldn't have been popular, when modern technology was surpassing magic, but magicians always stayed at the forefront of it.
Yeah, you talk about in the book, how for a long time, there'd be somebody doing illusions and tricks, but they kind of thought of being kind of, off-center. It really wasn't a profession that people would go see. And then that kind of changed, I guess, somewhere in the 1800s, where people would pay to see a magician. They would do it in a theatrical setting. It became more show business.
Yeah, I would say that magic gradually worked its way into the theaters, probably a little before that. But there was certainly a golden age, kind of from the 1870s to maybe the 1920s. And what you see is that was concurrent with music hall and vaudeville as well. Mm-hmm. So now if a magician had a good act, had a novelty, had something interesting, they could find work. They could go from theater to theater, and there was a circuit of theaters who would support them. So that led to an incredible creativity in magic, people with interesting acts and new ideas in acts. And that fostered a lot of interest in magic with the public and also with magicians.
I guess, again, from your book, Robert Houdin, I guess he would be the first big star in magic. Would he be the first one that kind of made it in mainstream show business?
There were certainly public stars before then in terms of public awareness of magicians. Robert Houdin has a unique position, though. You're right in picking out that name. He was a French magician who wrote a brilliant series of books, both technical books and also his own memoirs about his career. And he inspired generations of magicians after him. There's no question that a number of magicians were incredibly inspired by Robert Houdin. One of those people who was inspired was an American immigrant named Eric Weiss,
right,
who took his name, Houdin, and added an I to the end of it and became Houdini. And Robert Houdin has an amazing story about his career and being asked to go down to Algeria for the French government. We now see that much of that was exaggerated. He really did go down there, and he really did do the show, but he exaggerates the importance of all those shows. You'll be shocked to hear that magicians, when they tell their own stories, tend to be slightly deceptive in their own right. I know that's a shock to hear that, but one of the stories about this book is that we had a chance to go back and look at those myths, look at those exaggerations, and tell the real stories that were behind those.
Yeah, fascinating stories you have in the book. A lot of great pictures as well of these artists. You talk about Harry Houdini, of course. That's the one I guess most people associate with really bringing it to the forefront in America, I guess, vaudeville, and then his great escape stunts that he would do. He was hugely popular, wasn't he?
He was known, I would say, he was known by the public in his day, not as a magician. He was known basically as an escape artist.
Right.
But he definitely used the skills of a magician, and he was a very knowledgeable magician all through his life and all through his career. And at the end of his career, he toured with a show that was equal parts of magic and escapes, and then he also exposed spiritualists. So he had a wide range of skills, and he was known by the public as indulging in all those skills and bringing them a series of wonders one after the other.
Yeah. And again, as time went on, television, of course, came in. I mean, obviously, the magicians weren't any good on radio, so they had to wait till TV came in before they could get into that field. And there was a few that made it there, but I guess not until, more recently with Copperfield and Doug Henning, I guess, back in the 70s with the magic show on Broadway.
Television was an interesting, difficult fit because of the people doubting whether it was real or whether it was special effects. And I'd also say there were determined magicians who made it on radio.
Really?
I know that sounds weird, but there were magicians who went on radio and read the minds of other people.
Right.
Through the medium of radio and pointed out that they could do this. So I would say that, magicians, one of the stories of this book is that magicians have never been daunted by technology. Technology is always something to overcome, and when there's something miraculous that appears in technology, magicians quickly acquire it and twist it around and use it to their own ends, just like magicians go on radio or go on television.
Yeah. I was kind of wondering today, kids have been exposed, say, 15 years and under to cell phones and all the TV and movies effects. Are they even getting interested in magic? Because nothing can really compare to what you can do on film and TV now. Magic tricks got to seem dull to them. I hope they're still getting into it, but what have you found?
I would say that, one of the things that we see through the history of magic is a continual kind of woe is me attitude of magicians, that, we can't do magic anymore because there's something called electricity or there's something called television. And certainly magicians can't compete on the level of a special effect in terms of their own performances. But there is just in recent years, there's been another resurgent interest in magic, and I think part of that is a number of really innovative, clever performers who are charging off in different directions. In terms of technology and competing with technology, you'll now see magicians, really clever magicians, borrow your cell phone, turn it on, and then do something completely amazing with it that you didn't know was possible, like the cell phone reading your mind or predicting something that was about to happen. And then they hand the cell phone back to you, and of course it doesn't work for you, and you have no idea how that happens. So I would say that is part of a long tradition of magicians co-opting technology and using it to surprise audiences. Yeah. And just when you think that there's no place for magic in the real world, magicians find a place.
Well, that's good to know. I know David Copperfield's still out in Vegas. Every time I go out there, he's still at the MGM, so
absolutely.
He's still popular.
Does a fantastic show.
Yeah. And there used to be all magic shows out there. I hope that comes back again, but guys like Lance Burton and all that. But anyway, we have limited time today, so I just want to give a taste of the book to the audience. It's called The Secret History of Magic, The True Story of the Deceptive Art, and Jim Steinmeyer and Peter Lamont, your co-author. Do you have a website, Jim, you can direct people to?
JimSteinmeyer.com.
That's STEINMEYER.
And MEYER.com. Yep.
Great. Jim, pleasure talking to you. Hopefully we can do it again. Thanks for being with us.
Hey, thanks, Doug. That was a pleasure.
Great. Thank you.